They shredded her bag at the checkpoint, then stopped cold when they saw the dark secret inside. The checkpoint loomed like a dark shadow over the dreary road. Anxiety hung thick in the air as vehicles crawled to a halt, the sun hidden behind a blanket of ominous storm clouds. Among the weary travelers was Sarah, gripping her steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Did they know? Had they seen what was in her bag? As she approached, the officers, clad in dark uniforms, eyed her with an intensity that made her heart race. She couldn't shake the feeling she was being watched, every breath in her chest tight, every heartbeat a deafening throb. When they motioned for her to pull over, her palms began to sweat. They started peeling her belongings from the bag, one item at a time. But when they came across the special compartment, everything felt as if it had halted. The stark metal blades of the scanners flickered ominously, reflecting the dread in her eyes. The tearing sound of nylon filled the air, like a raven-esque caw announcing the end. As the fabric frayed, dread strangled her heart. What were they going to find? The officers paused, faces frozen in disbelief, eyes wide as they uncovered an unexpected weight concealed within a dark secret she never thought would come to light. Every breath felt heavy in the brutal silence that followed. The air crackled with tension as the other travelers craned their necks, trying to decipher the drama unfolding. Whispers swirled like autumn leaves around them. What did she have in there? Do you think it's illegal? The air pulsed with shared curiosity, a collective judging of a stranger's fate, leaving Sarah feeling intensely vulnerable. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The officers leaned closer, whispering among themselves, eyes darting to the bag and back to Sarah. What lay before them had transformed the mundane into the extraordinary, turning an everyday inspection into a thriller that could only end in chaos or revelation. Sarah's breath quickened as she grasped the edge of the table, watching them with fear and desperation. All the secrets she had buried deep were clawing their way to the surface. Just as one officer opened his mouth to speak, a deafening crash erupted from the far side of the checkpoint, sending everyone reeling. Surprise and panic rippled through the crowd. Sarah barely noticed the uproar. She was lost in her thoughts, terrified and desperate for a way out. What would happen next? Would they pull her deeper into danger? The tension thickened. She was caught in an invisible web, a feeling she couldn't shake, and it left her yearning for answers as darkness loomed around her. What would they do with what they found? The explosion shattered the tense atmosphere, drowning the world in a cacophony of chaos. Metal twisted, glass shattered, and panic surged through the crowd like an electric current. Sarah's heart raced, every beat pounding with urgency. She briefly lost herself in the moment, the dark reality of her situation eclipsed by the overwhelming shock of the explosion. Fear turned to instinct. She turned from the officers, her thoughts racing. Escape was her only option. But before she could move, one of the officers barked an order, the sound slicing through the panic. Everyone stay calm. Stay where you are. His voice was authoritative, but it barely cut through the chaos. Sarah's gut twisted. In one blink, the officers had shifted their focus, recognizing the real threat outside. A wall of darkness seemed to settle around her as she glanced back at her shredded bag, still left open, the secrets inside a potential grave danger. They hadn't found everything, but what they saw was enough to keep them occupied. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each second, and in that moment she saw her chance. She swallowed hard, adrenaline fueling her limbs. Could she slip away unnoticed? As she darted toward the vehicle, she caught the expressions of the onlookers' fear painted across their faces, some frozen in shock. She couldn't allow their curiosity to anchor her. With every step, she felt the weight of the moment crashing down around her. But as she reached her car, fear turned to dread. A familiar figure emerged from the chaos, an agent she knew all too well. Derek. His steely gaze locked onto her, and she saw the faintest hint of a smirk. He was no stranger to this kind of turmoil, but she had always managed to stay one step ahead. Until now. "Sarah," he shouted, cutting through the noise. "What did you do?" Her heart pounded violently. The tight grip of panic squeezed her throat. What had she done? Behind her, sounds of unease echoed through the crowd. It was no longer just a checkpoint. The air was thick with suspicion and fear, a wild card thrown into the already turbulent game. "Get in the car." A voice boomed from the officers, breaking her reverie. They were mobile now, converging on her location. Derek stepped closer as chaos unfurled around them, but the urgency in his eyes wiped the smugness from his face. "What did you bring?" he pressed, watching her with steely determination. She felt exposed, the truth burning at the back of her throat, but revealing it could lead to everything falling apart. "Nothing," she managed to hiss, but her voice trembled, betraying the lie. The mark on her shoulder, a memory of a pact once made, gnawed at her conscience. Suddenly, another blast rang out, even louder than the first, shaking the ground and sending everyone into a frenzy. Derek grabbed her arm, yanking her toward the car. "You need to trust me. We can't stay here." As she glanced back, the officers bore down on the remnants of her bag, eyes widening in horror at what they'd uncovered. Her mind raced. What had they revealed? If they pieced it together, everything would crumble. Ripping her gaze away, she slipped into her car, heart thudding like a war drum. With Derek by her side, she knew they had to move. But as she prepared to pull away, dread twisted in her gut. What if this wasn't just about her anymore? What if they had opened a door that led to something much darker? The chaos morphed into a storm behind them as they fled the scene, but the not knowing gnawed at her brain. The checkpoint was just the beginning. The real danger was still out there, lurking in the shadows. What would they find next? What had she unwittingly unleashed? Her mind whirled with endless possibilities as the road ahead twisted into the unknown. They had made it out this time, but would they be able to escape what was coming after them? The question loomed, heavy in the silence between breaths. The engine roared to life, shattering the chaos that still clung to Sarah like a heavy fog. She gripped the wheel, knuckles white as fear fought against reason in her mind. Derek shifted in his seat, casting a wary glance over his shoulder. They didn't have a moment to lose. They needed to put distance between themselves and the carnage unfolding behind them. "What did they find?" he asked urgently, his voice stained with anxiety that matched her own. "I don't know. I don't remember," Sarah replied, panic gnawing at her tongue. She could still picture the frantic looks of the officers sifting through her things, their expressions shifting from confusion to horror. The red light had flickered on in her mind, but she was too scared to fathom that their discovery could lead to unforeseen consequences for both of them. "Whatever it is, it's bad enough for them to pull out the big guns," Derek muttered. "They'll be onto us. We need to lay low and regroup." No sooner had he spoken than a helicopter sliced through the air above them, floodlights sweeping across the ground. Sarah's breath hitched as the light caught the rearview mirror, illuminating the panic that radiated from Derek's face. They were being hunted. "Turn here," he directed, his voice snapping with urgency. "We'll head toward the warehouse district. It's a maze down there. They won't pursue for long if we lose them in the shadows." Her heart raced as she followed his instructions, swerving into a narrow street lined with crumbling brick buildings and tangled weeds. The haunting glow of the helicopter flickered farther behind them, but fear lodged itself deeper in her gut. She could almost feel the eyes of the officers and the weight of their judgment in every shadow as they navigated the labyrinth of alleys. Derek's focus remained locked ahead. "We need to find a place to hide, a safe house, something," he said, scanning the surroundings for any semblance of refuge. "There's no telling how quickly they'll mobilize with whatever they found." Sarah nodded, her heart racing as she steered into a more secluded area. The streets narrowed, almost threateningly so, as if pushing them deeper into some forgotten part of the city. Fear crept in, but a spark of hope ignited with the possibility of escaping detection. "Stop!" Derek's sudden command made her jerk the wheel, tires screeching against the pavement. Up ahead, a dilapidated building loomed, its windows boarded and blackened. It looked like it had been untouched for years. "This? Here?" she questioned, doubt lacing her voice. "It's perfect. No one would think to look here," Derek urged, scanning the perimeter quickly for any signs of impending trouble. Stay low and let us hope for the best. With trembling hands she slipped the car into park. They both shuffled out, hearts pounding as they ducked behind the wreckage of what once was a mechanic-esque garage. Sarah could feel the urgency vibrating in the air around her. They didn't have a moment to waste. As they peered cautiously around the corner, they spotted the shadows of officers still milling about the checkpoint, visibly agitated, their radios crackling with commands. They can't stay there forever, Derek said, echoing her thoughts. We need to keep moving. But in the back of her mind, dread clenched tighter. What had they discovered? What secrets had she unknowingly unleashed? As they huddled against the crumbling bricks, her mind racing with the weight of their impending doom, an unexpected sound echoed down the street, a soft ticking. Do you hear that? Derek's eyes widened, and they both turned toward the source of the sound, pulse quickening. The ticking grew louder, echoing through the air like a countdown. It rang like a death knell in Sarah's ears. She opened her mouth, but no words came as panic rose like bile in her throat. What had she unearthed? They had escaped the chaos, but what if the chaos was just about to catch up with them? The question clawed at her, leaving her breathless with a fear she couldn't shake. The tick-tick-tick seemed to throb within Sarah's skull, a pulse of dread syncing with the rapid thump of her heart. She exchanged a panicked glance with Derek, whose face had drained of color. They couldn't just stay here. Not with that sound growing louder, wrapping around them like a noose. Is it a bomb? He whispered harshly, but the vibrant panic behind his eyes signaled that they both knew the alternative was too terrifying to voice. They had faced so much already. Were they really about to blow up in this rundown nightmare of a place? I don't know. She stammered, her voice caught somewhere between disbelief and sobs. Her stomach twisted painfully, the urgency of the moment merging with the weight of the secret she had buried deep within her mind. There had to be a way to silence the ticking, a way to escape before whatever horror awaited them decided to reveal itself. Suddenly, the ticking stopped. Silence fell, thick and suffocating, building a tension that crashed over them like an ocean wave, ready to pull them under. Sarah bit her lip until she tasted blood, glancing around, desperate for any sign of movement. The officers were further up the street, still barking orders into their radios, oblivious to the potentially deadly dance unfolding around them. Maybe it stopped, Derek murmured, scanning the area. But the tightness in his voice told her that he didn't believe it. Then, without warning, they heard shuffling feet approaching. Panic set in all over again. We need to get inside. Derek pointed at the darkened building looming behind them, its door slightly ajar. Sarah nodded, heart racing. As quietly as they could manage, they slipped behind the front wall and ducked inside. The air inside was stale, carrying the dank scent of mildew and dust. Sarah's fingers flitted along the wall, searching for stability amidst the chaos fluttering in her core. The dim light filtering through cracks in the boarded windows stretched across piles of old tires and rusted metal, nothing but remnants of forgotten days. What if they searched this place? She whispered urgently, her eyes darting around. The idea of being trapped here cornered made her skin crawl. Then we'll figure it out. Just breathe, Derek replied, though he looked far from calm. He squeezed her shoulder gently, grounding them both in the moment, but she could read the fear lurking just beneath the surface before she could respond. A loud bang vibrated through the building, rattling the loose debris around them. Panic splintered between them, hearts racing, adrenaline surging. What was that? She gasped, her voice barely escaping her throat. Probably them. We need to find a way out, Derek muttered, scanning the darkened room. He zeroed in on a doorway at the back, the cracks in its frame offering a faint sliver of light. There. The two dashed to the door, breath held tight in their chests. A testing shove revealed that it was jammed. Sarah pushed, but it wouldn't budge. She leaned in, every ounce of her urgency focusing on the door, and threw her weight against it. There was a loud creak, and then it flew open. They stumbled out into an alley, a narrow passageway consumed by shadows, though the sounds of chaos echoed closer. This way, Derek urged, pulling her down the path as they began to run. The ticking returned abruptly, this time louder, almost mocking them with its relentless beat, closer, closer, like a heartbeat or the countdown to something imminent. No, we can't, Sarah shouted, panic swelling in her chest. They had to silence it, but how? Keep running, Derek shouted back, desperation evident in his voice, but Sarah's mind reeled. She needed to confront it, to face whatever horrors lay within her past as they rounded a corner. Another loud crack ricocheted off the walls, the sound of a door slamming open and voices reaching a fever pitch. There. They went this way. Every instinct screamed for them to move, to escape the grip of fate. But as they dashed deeper into the unknown, Sarah felt an eerie certainty. The ticking hadn't just been a sound, it was a warning. Something was about to unravel, and she was at the center of it. Then, with a deafening roar, a shot rang out. They froze in place, breath hitching like a tightening noose, hearts pounding. Sarah's head spun toward the sound. Run! Derek shouted again, the command filled with raw urgency. But where could they run? And what would it take to finally stop the ticking in her head? The answers loomed just ahead, uncertain and terrifying. The moment was upon them, and they were clearly unprepared for what lay ahead. They sprinted down the alley, feet pounding against the pavement with a frantic rhythm. Sarah's heart raced to match, each beat amplifying the dread that clawed at her throat. She could hear them, voices shouting, boots slapping against the ground, tracking her, inching closer. Where do we go? Derek gasped, looking over his shoulder, eyes wide with terror. They had to hide. Somehow they had to become shadows beneath the chaos thrumming around them. There. Sarah pointed toward a doorway half hidden behind a trash bin. They darted inside, breathless, condensed in the narrow space. Time felt warped. Every second hung like a weight on their shoulders. Once inside, the darkness enveloped them, wrapping them in a heavy shroud that eased the urgency, if only slightly. Derek leaned against the door, hands on his knees, breath coming in ragged gasps. Sarah reached for the wall, fingers trembling along its surface, seeking reassurance in the cold, hard brick. What now? Derek whispered, forcing his eyes to meet hers. There was a desperation there. A flickering light of determination battling against the looming dread. We need to figure out what that ticking was, Sarah replied, her voice barely above a hush, haunted by the noise that had driven them here. I can't shake the feeling it's connected to everything. Just as she spoke those words, the door rattled violently, a boot slamming hard against it. They jumped, terror spiking in their chests. Check that one. Rang out another voice, commanding and urgent. Derek. She grabbed his arm, pulling him farther into the shadows of the room. We need to hide. They ducked behind a stack of crates, the musty air filling her lungs. The voices grew louder, accompanied by the thump of more footsteps. Did you see them come this way? A man barked, too close for comfort. Not after they turned that corner. But we've got to comb every room. Sarah clutched Derek's arm tighter, her mind racing. She couldn't help but think about the ticking. The memory of it gripped her like icy fingers. It reminded her of something she had fled from. And as they waited in silence, too afraid to breathe, fragments of her past flashed before her eyes like ghosts in the dark. Then a zip. Something metallic slid against the wood of the floor near the doorway. The voices paused, the sound replacing their shouts, replaced by a sharp inhale. Heart in her throat, Sarah peered over the crates, a flashlight beam cut through the darkness like a knife, illuminating Derek's terrified face in stark shadows. What the hell is this? The first officer said, his eyes glinting as they landed on Sarah's abandoned backpack, cluttered with everything but what they most needed. They ripped my bag at the checkpoint. She hissed suddenly, her nervousness erupting. Please just keep quiet. Just let them pass. Renew your confidence in me. The officer kicked it with a grunt. Check it out. We need to make sure they aren't hiding anything. Panic surged inside Sarah, as feelings of exposure washed over her, drowning her notions of control. Derek squeezed her hand, a mere touch yet filled with urgency and fear. What if they find it? He whispered, eyes darting toward the entrance, stuck between despair and hope. With a sudden jolt of courage, Sarah lunged forward, reaching for the strap of her bag. She felt the pulsing rhythm of the ticking echo in her mind that had haunted her for so long. The weight of what lay within felt heavier than it ever had. But just as she was about to snatch it, another officer pushed through the door, eyes locking onto the backpack. This is it, boys, he declared. No, Sarah yelled, lurching forward. The moment stretched as if time itself hit a wall. They couldn't let them find it, not now. Not when everything was teetering on the edge of chaos, but it was too late. And as the zipper slid open, the darkness inside spilled out into the light, a shocking revelation that would change everything. What lay hidden in her bag was more than a secret. It was the ticking clock that had awakened fears and finally brought them face to face with their worst nightmare. But as they moved, a chilling thought encircled her heart. What if the truth was worse than she could have ever imagined? The contents of the backpack tumbled into view, drawing sharp intakes of breath from the officers. A small device, glimmering ominously under the shaft of their flashlight, lay sprawled across the floor. It was round, glossy metal, wires protruding at odd angles, and a glowing red button sat in the center, pulsing like a heartbeat. What the hell is that? One officer barked, taking a step back. The room seemed to shrink around them as panic spread like wildfire. Sarah, what did you do? Derek's voice trembled, eyes wide with horror. I don't know. Sarah's words tumbled out like a frantic echo in the dark. Fear clawed at her throat, choking her resolve. If they thought it was a bomb, their safety net had ripped apart, and now they were adrift in a sea of danger. Everyone out! The lead officer shouted, voice sharp and commanding. He stepped further into the room, his flashlight beam dancing over the device, analyzing it like it was a specter risen from the depths of a nightmare. Sarah felt Derek's hand slip from hers. He was scanning the room, eyeing every potential exit. She surged forward, adrenaline taking over. Wait! It's not what you think. It's just a shut up. He snapped, then turned to his team. We need backup in a containment unit now. Tension hung in the air like a heavy fog, smothering their options, wrapping around them like chains. Fear rushed through Sarah, and as she watched Derek's panic, her own heart plummeted. This was a misunderstanding she had to clarify, but how could she do that when their eyes screamed threat? Your hands! Up! Now! Another officer barked, their focus shifting to Sarah. The beam of the flashlight caught her face, and Sarah felt the heat of thousands of questions burning at her. I swear it's not dangerous. She pleaded desperately, but her voice trembled, betraying her fear. I was trying to drop to your knees. Derek glanced between Sarah and the officers, determination raging in his eyes. No, don't do it. He surged toward her, a protective instinct flaring like wildfire. Get back. Now, the officer yelled, brandishing his weapon. The authority in his voice cut through the chaos, freezing them both. Please listen to me. Sarah was desperate now, tears threatening to spill, her palms clammy. It's a tracker. I used it to trace, but the second officer cut her off. We don't need to hear your excuses. He edged closer, considering the glinting object. We have protocol. All her thoughts collided, 1,000 possibilities flooding her mind. This was no longer just about her secret, it was about survival. Exposing the truth could turn deadly. Suddenly, without warning, the device let out a sharp beep. The officers jumped back as Sarah's heart leaped into her throat. A timer flashed on its face, counting down 3 minutes remaining. What the hell is this? The lead officer shouted, fear threading through his voice now. Drop it, Derek yelled, panic flaring in his eyes as adrenaline kicked in. No. Sarah rushed forward, her heartbeat drowning out the chaos around her. It's just a timer. You need to listen to me. The seconds ticked away, each one a deadly reminder of the impending danger. Sarah's mind raced as she fought to reflect on what had just happened. If they believe this is a bomb, if they react poorly with a scream of warning, Sarah dove in front of the officers, ready to shield Derek. Don't shoot. You have to trust me. Trapped between the ticking clock quivering in her hands and the fracturing tension boiling in the cramped room, she exhaled slowly, her mind whirring. Fear enveloped them tighter with each tick. Everyone was on the edge, and in those fragile moments, the truth of what she had hiding within her bag was no longer just about survival, it was about redemption. But as she gripped the device, ready to explain, another voice cut sharply through the tension. What if they're not the only ones coming? A low rumble vibrated beneath them, accompanied by an ominous sound growing louder. A sound that made every instinct scream to run. What were they about to unleash? With the echo of the rumble still lingering in the air, the tension in the room escalated to a near breaking point. Sarah's heart raced like a wild stallion, the countdown enough to send every heartbeat echoing in her ears. She risked a glance at Derek, whose face was a mask of fear and desperation. The officers were glued to the scene, frozen as the ground beneath them seemed to tremble with an approaching force. "Get back!" one officer shouted, suddenly bursting into action, looking for safety as the others scrambled to follow. They formed a perimeter around the device, weapons drawn and hands shaking. Sarah stepped closer, instinctively shielding Derek, her pulse hammering in her throat. "Just let me explain," she cried, her voice thick with urgency. "It's not what you think." The timer is but another growl resonated outside, louder this time. As darkness pressed against the walls of the small room, the lights began to flicker, vibrating in time with the growls. Something was moving fast and furious, and it wasn't too far. "Are we really going to waste time?" the lead officer barked, his eyes darting around. "People could be coming. We need to secure this area." Suddenly, the device beeped again, and the glowing red button pulsed faster. One of the officers stepped back, terror etched across his face. He pointed shakily. "It's still counting down. Whatever that thing is, it could blow at any moment." Sarah swallowed hard, the lump in her throat almost choking her. No, it won't blow. She fought to keep her composure, fighting against the chaos swirling around her. "I swear I'll explain everything. But we need to." Her pleas were cut off by a crash outside the door, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. Panic seized the officers as they exchanged anxious glances. "A containment unit is a mile away," one officer cried out, fear seeping into his voice. "We don't have time for backup." Derek took a small step away from Sarah, searching for the cause of the noise. "We can't just stand here," he shouted. "We need to get out." The officers began to move toward the door just as another crash landed this time. It shook the entire room. The lights flickered once more, then fell into darkness, leaving them in obscurity punctuated only by the growing glow of the device. "Wait," Sarah called, a desperate realization breaking through the haze of fear. "We have to stay together. If we leave now, we might not make it back." But before anyone could respond, the door bursts open, crashing against the wall, and a figure bolted into the room, shadowy and dripping with urgency. It was a man clad in dark clothing, his hair soaked and drenched in sweat. Panic shimmered in his wide eyes as he scanned the room. "Help me!" he shouted, his breath coming in sharp gasps. "They're coming. You have to trust me." Eyes shifted, confusion mixing with tension. The lead officer, hands still trembling on his weapon, tried to assess the new threat. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, voice taut. "Someone who knows what that is." The man pointed at the glowing device. "You don't want to be here when they show up." The urgency in his voice cut through every layer of fear, creating a rush of adrenaline. Sarah stepped forward, past the officers, locking eyes with the newcomer. "What do you mean?" The timer continued to tick down ominously, and with it, the delicate balance between panic and clarity hung by a thread. The man seemed ready to spill secrets, but the seconds were slipping away, and disaster loomed closer. The rumbling returned, sending vibrations through the air, a loud, chilling roar. "Get ready!" the man yelled above the chaos. "They're coming and we need to get out. Now." Every instinct told Sarah to listen to him. Trouble was on the horizon, and the weight of the world pressed down on them with every quickening tick of the timer. Would they flee blindly into danger? Or could this stranger lead them to the truth they desperately needed? The choice remained as the final seconds echoed through the darkened room. The seconds dragged on, and the air hung thick with dread. Sarah could feel the weight of everyone's eyes, the tension almost palpable like a heavy fog. Behind her, Derek shifted uneasily, unable to mask his fear. This was no ordinary situation. "Look, we don't have time for explanations," the man shouted, urgency etched into every line of his face. "Trust me." He glanced nervously toward the door, as if sensing what was to come. "Who exactly should we trust?" The officer snapped back, his weapon still trained on the stranger. The other officers were equally tense, their weapons wavering slightly in the dim light. Another crash sounded outside, sending ripples of terror through the group. Sarah's heartbeat quickened as she glanced at the now pulsing device, flickers of light painting the faces around her with shades of panic and desperation. "Whatever is coming, it's big. We can't stay here." The man's voice rippled with urgency, but it was low and strained. "They're drawn to it." He thrust his chin toward the device, and before Sarah could ask what he meant, The door buckled with another heavy hit. Okay, we need a plan. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos like a knife, though it trembled with uncertainty. If we stay here, we'll be trapped. No, the lead officer barked, waving his arm to keep the others in formation. We need to secure this device first. It's our only way to control the situation. Control? Derek's voice shook. You think that thing can be controlled? It looks like it's about to implode. He threw a glance at Sarah, desperation mingling with the urgency of the moment. Listen to me. The stranger stepped forward, his eyes darting nervously. If you're right, it will take everything out with it. But I can help. I know how to shut it down. The other officers exchanged uncertain glances, weighing their options. As they hesitated, a sound like thunder filled the room, reverberating through the walls. The device flickered wildly, its countdown constricting the already impossibly tight space. Now, rumbled the man. Before it's too late. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. What do we do? Follow me. The man dashed toward the back of the room, and despite her instinct screaming to stand firm, Sarah moved instinctively, grasping Derek's hand tight as she followed him. Surrounded by uncertainty, their unity was the only shred of comfort she could hold on to. The lead officer hesitated, eyeing his fellow officers. They were torn between the security of their post and the imminent explosion. We split up, he started, but the words died on his lips as another roar echoed outside, louder and more menacing. The noise reverberated, shaking the structure, and a primal fear surged through everyone present. Now, go. The man yelled again and led them towards an emergency exit, its stark red sign flickering menacingly amidst the chaos. They sprinted, adrenaline pumping through their veins, the device's countdown haunting them like a ticking time bomb. As they reached the door, it swung open with a crash, revealing a narrow, dark passage. A gust of hot air pushed against them, carrying the stench of sulfur and something far worse. It was the last door they could use, with no paths leading back. The seconds continued to tick away. What's down there? Derek panted, glancing over his shoulder at the flickering countdown that seemed to grow louder by the heartbeat. Only way out. The man shouted, pulling Sarah forward. Trust me. Trust him. With a heavy exhale, they plunged into the darkness, shadows closing around them like a consuming fog. Visions of what lay ahead swirled in Sarah's mind, each step fraught with uncertainty. But below, promises of truth mingled with screams and rough forms in the depths. She felt the sinister weight of fate bearing down. And with a racing heart, she wondered, could they uncover the hidden cause behind it all before the clock struck 0? The dark passage echoed her fears, and her heart drummed a warning. The real danger was yet to come. As they stumbled deeper into the dim corridor, Sarah strained to see, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. The flickering lights behind them faded until they were enveloped in shadow, the air thick with remnants of fear and the acrid smell of burnt metal. Every rotten breath made her chest tighten. Where is this leading us? Derek's voice quivered, urgency lacing each syllable. Are you sure it's safe? I've been down here before, the stranger replied, his voice shaky yet authoritative. But not like this, not with them close. We need to move. Before they could process his words, a thunderous crash echoed through the passage behind them. The floor trembled as if the very earth was answering their dread. Panic surged between Sarah and Derek. They picked up the pace like a boulder racing downhill, feet pounding against concrete until it echoed like an avalanche. Suddenly, the man stopped abruptly, raising a hand. Wait! I need. Before he could finish, muffled howls resonated through the walls, overpowering the sound of their breaths. Sarah felt her stomach drop. It was more than just fear that filled the air, it was pure, unadulterated terror. Let us go back. An officer shouted, jolted into action by the noise. But the stranger held firm, shaking his head. This way. It's our only shot. Without waiting for agreement, he plunged further into the abyss, a flickering silhouette against the darkness. It was like following a ghost. Sarah and Derek had no choice but to follow, adrenaline fueling their anxiety. They pressed on, the passage narrowing until Sarah felt the walls close around them. They stepped cautiously, bracing for what could be lurking ahead. All the while, the howls grew louder, raw and unrelenting like wounded beasts. Without warning, the passage opened up into a cavernous room, but what Sarah saw made her freeze in place. Enormous machinery buzzed with arcane energy, and at the center was a shimmering orb pulsating like a heartbeat. It cast an eerie blue light that flickered against the stone walls, illuminating the faces of those trapped in horror. "What is this place?" Derek whispered, terror etching his features. "The heart of it all," the man said, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. "If we can disrupt its energy source, we might stop whatever is coming." Just as he started moving toward the orb, heavy footsteps thundered from the passage behind. The chamber echoed with dread. Shadows glided across the walls, figures creeping in from the darkness. "Come on," Sarah shouted, grabbing Derek's arm. Together, they sprinted toward the machinery, but the figures behind them were relentless. They could feel the heat of the pursuing chaos, pressing closer as fear seeped into every fiber of their beings. The man reached for a control panel, fingers trembling. "Help me. We must overload it. This is our only chance." Sarah glanced back. A monstrous form loomed closer, its presence like an oppressive storm. They had only a few seconds before it broke through. "Do it," she shouted, urgency spilling from her veins. "Now." As the man frantically typed away at the panel, Sarah's heart raced, a countdown echoing in her mind. But could they really stop whatever was after them? Or would this room become their tomb? The lights dimmed, flickering wildly. She felt the pulse of the orb, felt compelled to reach out. Instinct screamed, was this her fate? Then she noticed it, a trembling edge to the machinery, a rift forming in the air. "Sarah, the energy is building too quickly." The man's voice was barely audible above the noise. "We need to finish now or before he could finish." The chamber shuddered violently. "Run!" Derek yelled, tugging Sarah back. But she was frozen, caught between the unknown and the urgency to escape. The true danger loomed ever closer, a menacing shadow sweeping over them. And then, in that moment of twisted uncertainty, she wondered who would survive, and at what cost? As the cacophony intensified, one last question flickered in Sarah's mind, absorbing every ounce of hope. What would happen if they failed? The moment hung like a fragile thread. Sarah stood at the heart of the chaos, the humming orb pulsating ominously as shadows surged toward them. Fear gripped her throat. Everything felt surreal, like moving through a nightmare where no one could wake her up. Derek's grip remained firm, but the urgency in his eyes brought her crashing back to reality. "Come on," he shouted, pulling her toward the control panel where the stranger fought against the machine's chaotic energy. Sarah's pulses raced with confusion, but instinct overtook her. They had to overwhelm whatever dark entity lurked in the shadows, drawing them ever closer. "Just a bit longer," the stranger urged, fingers flying over the buttons, each click resonating with hidden dread. Sarah quickly glanced back, feeling the weight of malice creeping in, a dark mass ready to consume them. "We can't let it get us, Derek." She felt the tremors of the ground beneath them, echoing her racing heartbeat. Derek shouted, "We need to power down that orb. Now." The urgency in his voice jolted her into action. They surged forward, pushing past the fear clawing at their hearts. "I need you to hit that lever." The stranger flung his hand toward a red switch surrounded by flickering lights. "Just pull it. It could disrupt the flow." Without hesitation, hope flared to life in Sarah's chest. She lunged for it, her heart racing as shadows loomed larger behind them. The air itself buzzed, electric with tension, and as her fingers grasped the lever, she felt a sudden surge of determination. "On three," she yelled, inhaling deeply, igniting the fire within. 1, 2, 3. She yanked it with all her might, and the room lit up, engulfing them in blinding light. A deep tremor shook the ground as the orb flared, its pulsing rhythm echoing like a drum. The howl of darkness met the sudden rush of light, intensifying as a powerful wave exploded outward. "Hold on," the stranger cried, palming a nearby panel as he struggled to maintain balance. Derek grabbed Sarah, holding her tight as the orb throbbed violently, and the shadows split apart, retreating into the void outside. The air crackled, a sweet release flooding their senses, and as the tension peaked, the swirling mass of darkness imploded, erupting into a silvery mist that filled the space around them. They all staggered back, breathless. Silence fell, piercing through the humming energy that began to retract. Sarah blinked against the shock of brightness. A weight lifted, leaving only a whisper of darkness in its wake. "We did it," Derek exclaimed, his voice trembling with awe. The stranger nodded, relief washing across his face. But we need to leave. Now. They scrambled back toward the exit, urgency driving them forward. No more waiting. They weren't safe yet. They had to vanish before the darkness fully retreated, lest it find another way back. As they emerged into the open air, the chaos of the world returned. Sirens wailed in the distance, but the immediate threat had dissipated. The officers who had once cornered them stood stunned, glancing around in disbelief. Sarah could see the flicker of confusion in their eyes as they processed what had just unfolded. Derek turned to Sarah, holding her face in his hands. Desperation and joy mingled. "Are you okay?" "I think so." The adrenaline still raced through her veins, yet amid it all, a strange calm settled. "Wait," the stranger interjected, still catching his breath. "You need to understand. This isn't over. They'll come for you. The device you had." He hesitated, scanning their surroundings. "It's part of something bigger." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, concern knitted in every brow. His gaze sharpened. "There's a whole network behind this, and if they realize they've lost you, I don't want to know." Derek snapped, voice edged with tension. "No, listen. If they realize you escaped the checkpoint, if they find out what you revealed, it's only the beginning. You have to be careful." Sarah's heart twisted. They had crossed a threshold that could not be uncrossed. Would she ever find peace? The crackling tension in the air reminded her of the shadows lurking over her past. For a fleeting moment, she thought about the darkness within herself, the choices she had made, and the cost. It would always be there. "I'll handle it," she finally said, resolved. "I won't let this define us. If they come, we'll fight back." Derek nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. The stranger stepped back, offering a salute of respect. "And if you need me, I'll be around," he said before dissolving into the crowd, relinquished back to the shadows from which he de-emerged as routines returned to life around them. Sarah breathed in deep, savoring the scent of freedom, clouded, yes, by uncertainty, but undeniably freeing. She and Derek would face this together, whatever it may hold. The air felt charged with promise, a chance for redemption and an end to the torment. They walked back toward the road, hands firmly clasped, ready to take on whatever battles awaited them. In the distance, the horizon started to lighten, a new dawn breaking over the jagged edges of their scars. They would forge ahead. Now, Sarah finally recognized the echo of her own truth. A dark secret could not bind her. She had emerged unbroken, alongside those steadfast in their trust. The journey was fraught with shadows, yes, but she would walk into the light, and together they would begin anew. But before they could fully embrace that feeling of hope, a voice echoed from the depths of the city, an afterthought of what was, a reminder of what still lurked. One truth remained. The darkness would always come looking. So they moved forward, each step echoing a promise. This battle was just the beginning, and in that moment the real fight had already begun. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans know how vital your support is.